crossing the river from the world of the living into the world of the dead.
So instead of coins to help the poor man cross over to the afterlife, the killers placed sheep's teeth there.
This would be a sign of ultimate humiliation. He would have gone like a beggar to the ferryman with nothing to show for his life but sheep's teeth.
For someone to do something like this, they would really need to be filled with anger or maybe desperate ambition.
Puzzled by this question, the team continues to dig and discover a cache of beautiful gold coins.
But on closer inspection, they realize that these aren't just any gold coins. They're what's known as solidi, Roman coins that are minted far away in the Roman Empire.
This is potentially a huge clue. It means that this community, or more likely the entire island of Urla, had a link with the Roman Empire.
The Roman Empire at its peak stretched from today's Spain to Syria, as far south as the Nile River Valley, and on the European continent, as far north as the Rhine River.
An empire that powerful would have had influence even in areas which they didn't directly control.
So despite being outside the boundaries of the Roman Empire, it's pretty much guaranteed that the people on the island would have sought to develop relationships with Rome. And these coins prove it. It makes sense, because after all, Rome was where most of Europe's riches were concentrated at the time.
Archaeologists conclude that the inhabitants of Sandby Borg, as well as the rest of the island, were indeed reliant upon patronage networks that linked to the Roman Empire.
The wealth flowing into Urland would have been vital to the economic and political stability of the different communities on the island.
But if that stability were disrupted, say by the collapse of the Roman Empire, well, that would be likely to have far-reaching consequences.
While analyzing the coins, an archaeologist notices something interesting. Many of the Roman coins found at Sandby Borg are dated to the 460s, but excavations on the eastern side of the island have found coins minted in the 470s.
This means that Sandby Borg had been receiving payments that came to a sudden halt. Based on the dates of these coins, when payments picked up again, it appears that they went to the eastern side of the island instead. This all happened at a time leading up to the massacre, meaning something had transpired to spark this drastic shift.
The archaeologists conclude that the massacre was likely the result of inter-island conflict. Someone, maybe from the eastern side, murdered all of these people, likely to seize or to maintain power.
Access to this stream of Roman wealth would have been highly coveted on the entire island. This could have motivated the vicious attack on Sandby Borg by one of the rivaling neighbors.
It could be, but as of now, we just don't know. Archaeologists on the island are still conducting excavations at Sandby Borg and the rest of Urla.
However, one thing is certain, and that is that human beings, whether they lived 1,500 years ago or today, will go to extraordinary lengths to acquire and maintain power.
Home to over 300 volcanoes, the Kamchatka Peninsula in eastern Russia is known as the land of fire and ice. The epic dome of the Motnovsky volcano is one of the most active in the region.
The volcano is about 45 miles from the Russian city of Petropavlovsk, and the area is only for true adventurers who can survive by their wits if the weather turns bad.
In 2000, researchers investigate an unusual site. Scattered across a rocky volcanic slope is the mangled remains of an airplane. Upon inspection, the wreckage is a PV-1 Ventura twin-engine patrol bomber, an airplane used by the United States Navy in World War II.
The PV-1 was a long-range bomber with a crew of 7. It had a maximum speed similar to that of the Zero, a Japanese fighter plane, and it could carry up to 6 500-pound bombs.
The crash has researchers puzzled. There's something weird about the shape of the debris field. It's not a typical crash site pattern. And weirdest yet, the bodies of the crew are missing.
What is an American World War II era plane doing on a remote Russian coast?
On the tail fin, researchers find the serial number, which allows them to match the plane to U.S. Navy records. They discovered the plane was known as Bomber 31.
In the early days of World War II, America took a pounding in the Pacific. But by 1943, the tide had turned, with the U.S. having seized the initiative. They attacked the Japanese positions in the Aleutian Islands off Alaska and took back the tiny island of Attu.
The U.S. quickly built a naval base on the island, which puts their bombers within reach of Japan's northern territory islands.
This was no easy task, and there were plenty of danger. Weather over the Bering Sea can be brutal to fly. Plus, there were 3,000 pounds overweight carrying extra fuel for the long flight.
On March 25th, 1944, a 7-man crew in Bomber 31 took off from Attu. They were headed for the Japanese islands of Shonshu and Paramashiro.
The round trip will take 9 hours in sub-zero temperatures. The route is known as the Empire Express, and it was so cold that they greased their faces to prevent them from getting frostbite.
They never returned. But the mystery of what happened to the crew of Bomber 31 might still lie in the crash site.
Researchers wonder if the plane could have exploded in midair, killing the crew aboard. As they search the Bomber 31 crash site for evidence of human remains, they realize everything is not what it seems.
There are several common debris field patterns that air accidents can be grouped into. This depends on the speed of the crash and the angle of impact. But this site has some strange anomalies.
An explosion in the air would send debris falling down in a scatter pattern. But when they start checking off key components of the wreckage to map the site, they find something really strange.
The plexiglass has vanished from the gunner's nest. The .250 caliber machine guns are missing. The cockpit instruments have been taken. And 5 out of 6 bombs are gone.
This can only mean one thing. Someone has been here before and has removed these things from this area.
Nearby the wreckage, there are 3 craters found where it looks like someone detonated these bombs at a later date. And nearby that, another live bomb is found.
We know this area was top secret during the 1960s and completely off limits to civilians. It's highly possible that the KGB came in here, tampered with the site, and cut up the fuselage.
The scattered debris pattern is not the result of the plane having exploded in the sky. This was the time when superpowers were trying to spy on each other from the air. So maybe the KGB moved things around to hide the fact that this was an American crash site.
Undeterred, investigators focused their search on finding any evidence of what happened to the men.
There are large caliber holes and heavy battle damage to both engines. The damage is consistent with being shot at by fighter planes.
But the angle of these holes are not in the usual place you would see damage. Fighter jets usually sit themselves in the 6 o'clock position, which is behind their target. Then they shoot. These holes were made from above.
Judging by the location of the damage, it looks like these men could have been injured by the bullets or by the engine bursting into flames. We just don't know for sure.
If the engines were disabled, did they lose control of the plane and die in a fiery crash?
That's it. I'm going on the Dunkin' Run.
I'll do a Dunkin' Run.
I'll also go on the Dunkin' Run.
Time for a Dunkin' Run. Add a $3 sausage, egg, and cheese to a medium or larger coffee. America runs on Dunkin'.
We want it all. We want our dog to fetch it and drop it. We want to fix it ourselves. And actually fix it. We want to order the market price lobster and know the market price of the lobster.
How much is whatever the market says?
Sadly, we can't have it all. Except at Sport Clips, where we check in with the pros in men's hair and totally check out with pure, uninterrupted relaxation. Sport Clips. It's a game changer.
Ever wonder why Kit Kats are so delightfully crispy? There's your answer. 1, 2, 3. Tasty wafers covered in creamy milk chocolate. Isn't it nice wafers are having their moment? Have a break, have a Kit Kat. Add mint to the moment with Mint Duos.
Anything can happen in college football. Your team can go from unranked to dynasty mode in just a couple years. The only thing that's a lock is the great offers from DraftKings. So we're getting new customers in on the pageantry, traditions, rivalries, all the action, with 200 instantly in bonus bets. All you gotta do is download the DraftKings Sportsbook app with the promo code and bet just $5. You're guaranteed to score in an instant. The crown is yours.
Hi, I'm Norma, and I lost 53 pounds on Golo. A lot of people expect to fall apart as they age, but since taking Release, my energy's improved, my skin's improved. I've never felt better.
MLB on TBS Tuesdays continues all summer long. Every Tuesday night, TBS is on the call. MLB on TBS Tuesdays.
There's something in there. Looks like something setting up. Holy crap. This is it.
Expedition Bigfoot, coming Wednesday at 10 to its new home on Discovery.
We are people living with AFib. And over 300,000 of us have left blood thinners behind for life. We've cut our stroke risk and said goodbye to our bleeding worry with the Watchman implant. We may be getting older, but we've never squeezed more out of life. And we are just getting started. Join us at Watchman.com. Watchman, it's one time for a lifetime. Pain hits fast.
What was
so
that?
get relief
One
fast.
time for a lifetime? What was
These
that?
shells have laser-jeweled holes. They release nice and fast for fast payload. And now, get relief without pill with
That was some weird shit right there.
Relief without the water.
Yeah, with Metro, there's no contracts, no price hikes, no surprises. There's not a yada yada.
Yada yada. Price hike yada yada.
Not a yada yada means wireless without the gotcha. Only at Metro.
This spot is solid. Pressure ridge is the real deal. The ice is jagged. It's easy to get your tether snagged. For an ice diver, that's the ultimate nightmare.
The wreckage of a World War II bomber that vanished along with a crew in 1944 is discovered on the side of a volcano on Russia's Kamchatka Peninsula. But some strange anomalies at the site leave investigators wondering not only how they crashed, but what happened to the crew. Careful inspection of the underside of the wreckage reveals heavy scraping, but there is no sign of a significant impact on the ground or damage to the wings.
And strangely, the engines have been ripped from their mounts and are lying halfway up the slope.
They determined that the propellers spun naturally to a halt. This gives them a huge clue.
Now they have a picture of what might have happened to Bomber 31. Near Shumshu Island, they get attacked by Japanese fighters. Tracers hit the engines and may have knocked them out. They try to make Russia's Petropavlovsk airport in Allied territory. Engine failure means they can't make it, but they spot a fairly even slope on a nearby volcano. They land the plane in deep snow on an uphill slope. The touchdown rips the engines off, and they land in one piece, coming naturally to a halt.
But if the plane made a successful crash landing, where are the crew? Yes, some could have been injured or killed before they landed, or even killed by the landing. But one thing is for sure, someone landed the plane.
They had a good chance of surviving the crash, and so that means if none of them had any life-threatening injuries, some of them could have walked away.
Unable to find obvious signs of the crew, researchers go over the site with a fine-tooth comb.
In the cockpit area, they discover a finger bone. But this is such a strange thing to find on its own when there are 7 crew members.
About 300 yards north of the crash site, they find a boot bearing Navigator Donald Llewellyn's name. But if he walked away from the crash, he would probably be wearing his boots.
Watch me die.
Under Near a piece of the forward wing, they discovered a fragment of human remains in some cloth and some vertebrae. Then, nearby, they discovered two right collarbones.
DNA testing confirms they are the remains of only 3 men: machinist Clarence Fridley, navigator Donald Llewellyn, and ordnance man James Palco. The other 4, pilot Walter Whitman, co-pilot John Hamlin, radio man Samuel Crown, and aerographer Jack Parler, are still unaccounted for.
The radio was missing, so they don't know if the crew could have called for help. We do know the U.S. sent 6 aircraft to search for several days after the plane disappeared, but they found nothing.
It was in March of 1944, and the Kamchatka Peninsula may have had dense fog or snow at that time of year, which would have made it very difficult to see anything. And if the rescue party was also attacked, it would have made for a very difficult search.
If any of the crew had life-threatening injuries, it wouldn't have been easy to take care of them, especially in below freezing temperatures. Exposure to the elements is a big factor in survival.
Their rations would not have lasted them more than a few days, so they could have just slowly starved to death.
When researchers expand their study of the surroundings, they discover evidence of a fire on a hill that overlooks the crash site.
They find bullet casings in the charred ground and think that maybe the crew set them on fire as an attempt to send an SOS signal.
But evidence of the KGB moving some of the wreckage has some experts wondering if the 4 missing men could have been taken prisoner.
A few days after they went missing, there's a report of a U.S. airman hearing the names of the Bomber 31 crew reported as captured on the Tokyo Rose propaganda broadcast.
A captured crew could be a highly valuable source of top-secret information.
If they had been rescued by the Russians or made the trek to Petropavlovsk, they would have been taken prisoner or interned. We do know that some U.S. airmen were imprisoned in Soviet labor camps and later executed or forced to renounce their U.S. citizenship. The lucky ones might have been interrogated and then smuggled out of the country.
But none of the Bomber 31 crew made it home. The Russians played a central role in defeating the Axis during World War II. But despite being allied with the U.S., they interred some 22,000 American troops over the course of the war, mostly as a result of having liberated them from German POW camps. While the vast majority of them were repatriated back to the U.S. An unfortunate few were held as prisoners by the Soviet Union, and some were even executed.
There's one theory above all others that strikes fear in the hearts of many adventurers who get lost or crash land in the wilderness.
The remains are so scant and scattered across this debris field that it could have been done by wild animals. And there are definitely some menacing predators roaming around on the Kamchatka Peninsula. I mean, bears, wolves. In the 1940s, there were even Siberian tigers.
Imagine facing a Siberian tiger after being shot down over foreign territory and surviving a crash landing. I can't even begin to imagine the hardship.
If any of them were injured or dead, the smell of blood would easily have been picked up by local wildlife, and they would have come to investigate.
We don't know for sure, but it is likely that the crew lost their lives while trying to seek help after the crash. The difficulties they would have encountered and the bravery required to face them are remarkable. But this legacy endures as the story of Bomber 31 passes on into history. Western Finland is known for its long, cold winters.
The land here is very flat, and the marshy, spring-fed fields often freeze completely over during winter.
In the mid-1880s, a few miles from the coast, farmers building drainage ditches in a boggy field uncover an astonishing scene.
Buried in the mud, they find bones and multiple human remains submerged in their lush fields.
Over the next century, multiple teams of archaeologists investigate the site, known as Levenluta. Altogether, hundreds of broken pieces of bones and multiple skulls were eventually found scattered and mixed together in the soft, muddy soil.
After thorough search, a total of 153 pounds of human bones were recovered from the field.
Researchers painstakingly count and analyze the bones, piecing fragments together, and they determine that the field contains the remains of at least 98 different individuals.
How did these people end up buried in the mud in a farmer's field?
This area has been farmland for centuries. There are no grave markers or memorials that give any indication of who they are. And the locals have no knowledge of a cemetery nearby.
Whoever these people are, they've been here a long time.
Carbon dating on the bones reveals they date sometime between the 4th and 9th centuries.
So these people are from the early Iron Age. They predate the Vikings. Could this be the remains of an ancient cemetery?